Okay, well, everyone, that puts us at 2 past the hour. So I want to go ahead and thank everyone for joining today. For those of you who haven't heard my voice before, my name is Kevin Grote, Senior Engineer and Technical Partner Manager here with VMware, coming to you today on behalf of our friends at Tech Data. Tech Data has been, so gracious as to help us, put these sessions together, and this session is certain to be no exception to the great enablement that you've been getting from us, and hopefully have come to expect from these special sessions. Today, in keeping with this whole tone as we're moving toward the end of the year and we're trying to close out Q4, one of the things that I really wanted to bring to you beyond just the normal solution stuff and the updates and the technical dives and all of these other great things that we do, I wanted to get a specialist in front of you, someone who could speak directly to what we're doing inside of the end user computing space, kind of from a larger vision, as well as qualifying deals, ways to move kind of in and out of transactions with Horizon, and get a better understanding of some of the new things that we're doing as well. So with that, we've got with us today Mr. Jeff Weiss. Jeff's joining us from the West Coast, so please forgive him as he caffeinates himself this morning. Jeff's a senior engineer inside of the end user computing space, and very excited to have Jeff speak. And with that, I will go ahead and say take it away, Jeff, and thank you very much.
Hey, well, good morning, Kevin. Yes, so I'm Jeff Weiss, and I'm an engineer in our end user computing group, and I am a partner-facing engineer. So if you've been in and around, you've probably met me. If not, if we're ever at an event and you see me, come up and introduce yourself. So today, Kevin said, hey, there's been a lot of announcements on the product set over the last couple of months. There's some new products to it. So I thought it would be great to sort of just give like an overview of where we are with the product set, but also give you sort of a feel for where the direction we're going. So with that, I'll just roll on. I've got a plethora of slides here, so we'll just blast through them. But all kidding aside, if there is any questions or so forth, please ask them in the chat box, or it seems like we have a small enough group that we could ask questions while we fly. Are you okay with that, Kevin?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. No worries here.
All right, so there's a couple of marketing slides at the front, but I like these slides because it really encapsulates where VMware is moving and why we feel the way we do about end-user computing. I'm sure many of you have already heard this catchphrase that what we're doing is we're creating this secure virtual workspace for work at the speed of life. This is a catchphrase that we've been rolling out, and if you look down below that line there, you'll see there's some devices you recognize for end-user computing, and then some that you might not consider part of an end-user computing solution. And the point here is that as we roll out our end-user computing access and so forth, we'll see the way end users access the data change. And so, of course, we have desktops and laptops in these pictures, but also, we have tablets and cell phones, and then there's a car here. And the reason for the car is that in the future, we're not exactly clear on how end-user computing will use all these resources, but it could possibly be a situation where that we're leveraging compute power inside of a car that goes out and accesses the internet, looks at your appointment calendar, and maps your direction you need to go through Google Maps. So the point here is that this framework that we develop needs to be encompassing and be able to expand to the new use cases. All right. Looking back, we could see that VMware has made a lot of investments in end-user computing. Just over the last year and a half, we've gone from night to day in many ways with our product set. So if you were talking to customers about VMware and our end-user computing and Horizon a year and a half ago, and it wasn't quite where they wanted it to be, now's the time to go back in and talk to those customers. So you can see over the last year and a half or so, we've acquired a company called Destone, and that is a leader in the desktop as a service. Desktop as a service that we can then now provide desktops without having the customer to manage that infrastructure behind it. We also had a largest acquisition so far for VMware, and that was AirWatch. And AirWatch is a great addition, market leader in mobile computing and so forth. And the idea here is that we're going to take our end user computing and we're going to merge it with the necessities of mobile computing to give our end users choice and security and management. And then we had some significant changes to the Horizon 6 View product set, where now we do offer remote application and so forth, and RDSH beyond just our offering desktops and so forth. And then just recently we have an acquisition around Cloud Volumes, which I'll talk about. We've rebranded that product to be called App Volumes.
You are now muted.
Go into detail as to what those products do. But if you look here, VMware is making the investment, and we've done more innovation and through these acquisitions and internal innovation with our product set in a year and a half than our competitors have done in 10 years. So there's a lot going on here, and so highly recommend we start talking to our customers about it again if you haven't been. All right, so I'm throwing this slide up here about the software-defined enterprise because at the heart of end-user computing is the applications. And the applications that we're serving up are either traditional applications that happen inside of a desktop, for example, that get installed into a desktop, or they could be applications that were built into the private infrastructure of a customer. Modern is more about using the Web 2.0 sort of techniques and so forth. And then we talk about SaaS applications. Many of our customers now are outsourcing some of the even basic tools that they leverage for their end users. For example, Salesforce is a good example on that one, that many companies now just outsource their sales tool suite to Salesforce, where now end users get a subscription, they log into Salesforce, and that proprietary information about that enterprise is stored off-site. When an end user leaves the company, there's not a real smooth way of shutting them off from all these SaaS applications that have been subscribed to. So there's some risk there. But when we look at the infrastructure that we've built around this, based on what made VMware, put VMware on the map is compute virtualization, the idea of being able to abstract compute, create these containers that then we can migrate from hardware to hardware, great total cost of ownership savings and management and so forth. You see us doing that as well with networking and storage. And so we then virtualized this pool, and we created this whole new idea of the virtual data center. Tie that with automation and operations, being able to look deep inside those infrastructures and be able to manage that, and then also combining that with the ability to migrate those workloads into the cloud and back through our hybrid cloud offerings. We've coined the phrase that we call this the software-defined data center. And so instead of managing individual applications, we drop them into a container, and then we have this policy-based management and automation. Well, that's all great, what we've done for that, the underpinnings of the applications. What VMware now has been doing is looking at the ways that our end users consume those resources. So when we talk about our end user computing solutions and how they're built on top of the software-defined data center, we're not making this up. Well, what we're saying is that we've created this infrastructure now that we can then scale up and allow the end users have access. And that's the next part of this conversation is really about how end user computing leverages the software-defined data center to provide access. All right, I'm going to keep going. I don't know if I should solicit questions at this point or just keep rolling. But if you have any questions or comments, please chime in. The other thing that we've noticed is that it's not a one-size-fits-all proposition. So depending on the end user and what they're doing, what they need to have access to, it could be as simple as granting them access to a virtual desktop in the back end of a data center. And so if they're in a call center, for example, or it might be that they are a high-end graphics user that needs access to high-end 3D rendering tools. So the point here is that because of these different needs, online, offline, and so forth, we have developed this framework of tools that can address the different workloads and the different types of access. So let me shift gears away from vision and reason and talk about the products that we've been bringing to market. So I'm going to talk about Horizon and what we've done and get into detail. I'm going to talk about Desktop as a Service, Horizon Air. I'm going to talk about Cloud Volumes, as I mentioned in the beginning. And then I'll talk about some other enhancements to the whole product set as I roll through the slides here. And once again, at the bottom, it says here, optimized for the software-defined data center. Since we do have control, or we've created the software-defined data center, we can create deep integration between Horizon View and your vSphere environment, or with Desktop as a Service, and the way the vSphere infrastructure of that service then is able to provide access and so forth. All right, so talking about VDI and the desktop, before I jump straight into the Horizon desktop enhancements, really what we're seeing is this transformation from this PC-centric world, and I think we're all, you've probably all seen these slides or something similar to it, but it's really happening. I mean, if you look at the fact that the PC sales have dropped tremendously, tablet sales have increased, people want to have access to their tools and don't really care what device it is. And we're seeing this push even deeper into enterprise. So we're going from this device-dependent, tightly coupled OS, complex management of that infrastructure, a lot of capital investment inside that, and dealing with a lot of different legacy applications and tools, to this device-independent world where the applications aren't really bound to an OS. That we can have a combination of internal and external resources that make up the application between a private cloud and a hybrid cloud or a public cloud. And we're also seeing customers really interested in lowering the total cost of ownership and just buying what they need through utility pricing. So this is not just a lot of talk on VMware's behalf. We're seeing our customers ask for this. All right, so what I'm going to do now is talk directly about Horizon 6. It's been out for a while now. We changed from the suite to what we call our editions, and by doing this, we really coupled the products in the way our customers use them. Later on, I'll show what is in detail in what is in each one of these editions, but they build on each other. So Horizon View Standard is basically our VDI offering. Horizon Advanced adds a bunch of features that we feel that customers would leverage along with Horizon View to have a feature-rich environment for their end users. And then Horizon Enterprise Edition then gives us monitoring and management and automation.
Jeff, one thing I'd like to ask, it seems like a good point. We did have a question. Somebody asked, does one necessarily need to have a virtualized data center to move on to end-user computing?
Now, that's a very interesting question. The first one would be, why they're not virtualized yet? No. The answer is that the Horizon DAS offering means that they don't have to have any infrastructure. So the answer to that would be no. Horizon View, if you're looking at virtual desktops, it seems like, well, you'd really want to have you do need a vSphere infrastructure to provide virtual desktops, but you could use View in a way that you're providing access to RDSH hosts that aren't virtual. So
yeah, I was just going to say, and also to that point, I mean, theoretically, you could also use physical systems, to the question, could be physical systems on the administration side if needed, and you could provide the desktop resources within virtualization. But
so the answer, I would answer no, it's not a requirement. But software-defined data center adds a lot of value in business continuity and cost savings. So, but the answer is no, it's not required for some of the components, but others you do require it. How's that for an answer?
Great question. Awesome. Thanks.
Yes, it's interesting that it was asked because. Anyway, okay, so let's go on.
Hi, sorry, this is Rucha.
Yes.
I think I was the one who asked the question, and actually came up from this inquiry for Horizon add-on. And so when we were reading about Horizon add-on, it came like you would ideally need to have vSphere in your environment, but if not, then you would need to have Horizon Desktop along with the add-on. So we were confused about the whole stuff, and also we want to know about what is Horizon add-on.
Yeah, so, okay. Great question. So when you purchase, we went from 0 to 60, and it's an excellent question. So I think what you're asking is what is Horizon add-on and what is Horizon Desktop? Is that kind of what I'm getting from that?
Yes, that's question one. Yep.
So Horizon add-on is a way to provide desktop licenses to customers who have a vSphere environment. Now, is that a best practice for large-scale VDI deployments? No, it's not, because we find that we need to create this cloud pod architecture for very large deployments where the management infrastructure is separate from the workload. But in smaller deployments, it seems to make sense in many ways. So that's why we offer the Horizon add-on. So what Horizon add-on says is this is a view deployment that we're not going to provide, VMware is not going to provide you the vSphere infrastructure. You already own it. Okay? So the desktop, the vSphere for desktops is for customers who don't want to run View and don't want to buy a bunch of vSphere enterprise licenses because maybe they're running one of our competitors' products in a virtual desktop. And so that allows end users to buy a version of vSphere that is only for desktop workloads, and those desktop workloads are not Horizon View.
Great. So when you say a small environment, would it be what would be the total? Limitation of desktops.
Well, it's sorry to say, but that's a depends question. And if I give you a number, it would just be a wild guess, right?
Yeah.
But the point here is that 100 users or less probably can be rolled out on a fairly small infrastructure, and you're probably not going to want to segregate the workloads that way.
Okay.
But once you get past that, it's also a question of what is the type of workload, what kind of workload is going to be on the desktop versus what is being run in the vSphere environment already. And so this is where we'd want to get in and do an evaluation of their current infrastructure before you would say, yeah, you can just do it, right? 'Cause
okay.
the worst thing would be to sell the customer on an infrastructure without really assessing what their needs are.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Three very good questions. Thank you so much. It makes it a lot more interesting for me too, since I'm just not staring at a screen talking about slides. So, all right. Any other questions before I continue on? All right, excellent. So Horizon 6, you may have seen this slide before. It sort of encapsulates everything that is about Horizon 6, desktop and application access. So we not only have a broker and so forth that allows end users to connect in, but also we have the infrastructure that deploys the virtual machines and in different types of pools. And I have some slides to show that. Blast Performance, Unified Workspace with Blast Performance. The whole idea here is that we're moving away from having to install agents, that we can use your HTML5 browsers. And this really appeals to customers that maybe don't want to provide desktops or physical desktops to end users, and then still allow access securely into the infrastructure. Centralized image management, we have a tool that I'll talk about, Mirage, that allows us to manage physical and virtual desktops and also virtual machines inside of BYOD, bring your own desktop infrastructure. And then we'll talk at the end about our closed loop management and automation, and this is around our vRealize suite for Horizon and how it helps our customers to manage and figure out what's going on with the infrastructure at any given time and end user experience. And then I did briefly talk about how we have hooks all the way down into the software-defined data center in the way of caching and providing easy tools for creating link clone environments and leveraging our vSAN infrastructure, which I'll talk about. And then hybrid delivery, of course, is that whole idea of having a hybrid cloud with private cloud and public cloud interaction. So let me talk about the Horizon 6 enterprise architecture first. So if we look at this diagram, and I've seen it drawn a bunch of different ways, and I like this one because the icons are really big and I can really walk through it a lot easier. But at its core, you see there's a vSphere infrastructure. So for virtual desktops, you do need vSphere. We also have a broker that sits in between that the end users would connect from their Horizon clients. And Kevin, let me know if you can see my mouse because I'm going to do some mousing over while I talk here.
Yep, I see you.
But so depending on what kind of device the end user is connecting from, they can connect to either a desktop that then gets provisioned on the fly for them, or it could be a static desktop, for example. We also have the ability, which is not drawn in here, is through our broker service, connection broker service, we can connect to physical PCs that are in an end user's environment. So you wouldn't need those. They don't all have to be virtual. Is my point in saying that. The other option here is also that end users can connect directly to applications that are hosted on RDSH hosts. And this is not a new technology by no means, but what we've done is we're taking these RDSH applications, these hosted applications, and we're tunneling them through our technology known as PC over IP. And PC over IP is a great technology that allows end users to access these tools over high latency, low bandwidth networks. So really improves the end user experience because that was one of the big hurdles we had. So now we can offer individual applications or whole desktops and feature rich to these clients. The other component here in this diagram is this workspace portal. And the whole idea of the workspace portal is that it gives end users or even our customers' IT infrastructures an ability to create kind of a single sign-on framework for all the different applications that an end user will leverage. And I'll talk about that in a second in more detail. And then finally, you see down here at the bottom App Volumes. And App Volumes is the new addition to our framework. And once again, I have some additional slides that I'll talk about to show what App Volumes is and how it works. All right, so I talked about RDSH hosted applications, and this the idea of this slide was really to show that it's not just an additional feature that isn't very well integrated. This shows the Horizon View Administrator panel, and it shows down inside there that we now have these farms that allow us to quickly integrate a RDSH host. And it's as simple as installing an agent, a View agent on that RDSH host and those applications and connecting it to the server, that then we can see these applications and start providing access to them right away.
One question we had, Jeff, somebody asked a good one. How does RDSH applications differ from what we're able to do in Workspace? So I think he's kind of talking about the difference between the SAML Federation, et cetera. So if maybe you could elaborate that at some point in this.
Yes, it's a great question. And okay, give me one more slide, and I have the document to show it. So this kind of leads into it. So the next thing that we've done is we've enhanced what we call BLAST, and BLAST is basically the ability to serve up access to applications over HTML5. And so we've done enhancements to allow 3D applications to be rendered very well. Multimedia now, we can stream multimedia applications. BLAST Unity Touch is the ability to take for a tablet or an iPad and create this way. So when you're using a tablet and so forth, it's way different than when you're using a desktop. And a desktop allows you to use a keyboard and mouse. When you're on a tablet, it's your finger and clicking and so forth. And what Unity Touch does, it gives you that finger motion to get to applications and activities in a virtual desktop. If you haven't seen it in action, it's great. It makes a virtual desktop on a tablet usable. We've also now got support for Link through HTML5. We're also getting enhancements around local device access through BLAST over HTML. All right, so the next discussion here is exactly to answer the question about what's the difference between, I think the question was basically, what's the difference between Workspace and providing RDSH hosts through PC over IP? And the answer is that Horizon Workspace is a single sign-on framework that can consume different resources in your infrastructure. So those resources could be a PC over IP access to a virtual desktop, or an RDSH host, or RDSH applications. We can also take a look at accessing, of course, SaaS applications, which are not part of that View framework, right? These are external, or even Google Apps, Office 365, and so forth. So there's not a difference between them. What the answer is that one provides access to applications through PC over IP from an RDSH host, and the other allows a single sign-on framework that allows access to those same applications. Now, let's say, for example, there is some subtleties here. One is we also can provide access to thin apps through Workspace. Now, thin apps require you to be running on a local x86 system, whereas an RDSH, since it's just passing the bits that are being operated on in the data center, that can be run on any application, any device. So it really comes down to that this is pretty much a Swiss Army knife of tools, and it's up to us as computer sales professionals to be able to understand our end users' needs and to be able to articulate how they can leverage these tools to the best to allow their end users to have access. Did that answer the question?
No, I think that's great. And just to elaborate very quickly, I think, to what you mentioned, also being able to, access and forward federate to things like Salesforce or Google Docs, so that you're not having to, supply folks with, multiple logins. And that also means that from an administration perspective, with Workspace, they can get people signed up, and they can also get people signed out very quickly to ease the HR and administration woes of accessing SaaS apps.
Yeah, so there's a few other things that I want to add to that, and thank you so much, Kevin. And that is that on the back end, we can also track and see the usage. So let's say we have some packaged thin apps around Office, and we see that we have 100 licenses, and our usage is 200. That means we need to buy more Office licenses. So it really gives us the ability to see which applications are being leveraged and to what degree. And also, for SOX compliance and so forth, we can see who logged in and who logged out of those applications. And then once again, as Kevin mentioned, we could turn them on or off. We could provide sort of an app store ability for people to subscribe to applications in a self-service methodology based on their role in the organization as well. So it really takes the manual process out, but gives us the control and security that IT managers need day to day. And by the way, another interesting thing about this, and I think I already mentioned it, but I'll say it again, this is the same experience from a thin client, from your fat client, your home desktop, a kiosk at the airport, a tablet, a cell phone, and so forth. So it really is a great way for end users just to get used to one sort of view of their tools. No pun intended. I saw a question flash up there, but I don't really have access to that. So I don't know, Kevin, do you want to see what that next question was?
Yeah, actually, someone asked, what is RDSH?
Okay, so RDSH is a technology created by Microsoft to allow multiple users to log into a server in the data center to access a specific application. And so it's very similar to virtualization in many ways, that multiple users can consume resources on a single compute resource. However, it is dependent on a single OS. If that single OS goes down, then everyone doesn't have access to those applications. Whereas in a vSphere environment, we're providing access to individual desktops, so they don't interact with each other. So if one desktop crashes, it doesn't cause the rest of them to crash, and so forth. But so that Microsoft technology has been around for a while. Another thing that it does is it allows end users to license one server for maybe large or complex applications and so forth. So it does make it a little easier to manage if that's the use case. So what we've done is, so the big problem with RDSH in the past was that it really didn't work well in high latency, low bandwidth networks, because it leveraged Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol, which didn't really work well in those use cases. So what we've done is we've teamed with Microsoft to allow us to tunnel that activity. So hopefully that answers the question.
I think that puts a tin lid on it. Super,
all right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Good question, though. Okay, so let me keep going now. So I've talked about Horizon 6 and some of the key technologies inside of it. We've created an additional product set on both sides of this spectrum here. So if you look at that bar at the top, it sort of shows central, and then it says local on the left side and in cloud on the right. And what this is trying to show is that, what Horizon 6 really does is it allows for us to create this infrastructure and so forth for a lot of use cases. But there are some perimeter use cases on both sides that Horizon 6 View and so forth may not fit the bill. And one is for what we call local compute or local access. And the idea of that is that, let's say we have a use case where an end user is offline a lot of times, or 50% of the time. Well, View requires you to be online to have access to that. Another use case is, which goes back to the physical question, is, well, let's say there's a use case that maybe it's a retail establishment that really needs to have local compute. And in case the network goes down, or for snappiness, or local look and feel of the application. So Horizon Flex is a tool suite that we've created, or a tool that we've created to help with that use case. So let me talk about kind of the pain points of physical desktops and remote use cases. So some of those pain points are around lifecycle management and updates. For example, that we just had the XP migration issue going on, right? To be quite honest, I still run into enterprises that are still trying to figure out how to get away from XP. But now there's a new one, right? We got to migrate from 7 to 8, or whatever the next Windows version is going to be. Another use case is, contractors and people who are on the road. And I sort of talked about that. But a lot of companies now, they're hiring contractors and saying, hey, bring your own desktop. And it's kind of a requirement. But yet they still want to provide them access to tools that are controlled by IT. So we'll talk about that and how we can do that with this tool suite. And that leads into the security and compliance aspects of this. And, we all are familiar with those stories of, I don't know, like I think it was an IRS agent who left a laptop in the trunk of their car. It got broken into, and suddenly 200,000 Social Security numbers are at risk. Well, the idea is that we build a solution that we create the ability to control access and so forth, but also to blow up that virtual machine, for example, if it doesn't phone home in a certain amount of time, and I'll talk about that. And then there's also business continuity and disaster recovery, which are still alive and well issues, right? All right, so let me talk about what Horizon Flex is and how it works. So sort of talked about already, what use cases that it solves by, sort of showing the pain points. So it was kind of self-serving slide beforehand. But the whole idea is that we're seeing a lot of Macs and now into the enterprise, and they still need to have access to Windows-type applications and so forth. And we talked about the other use cases. So let me move forward here. So what is Horizon Flex? So we've heard a lot about it. Flex consists of three major components. A management server that we use to connect to the virtual desktops that are on physical devices inside the enterprise, or that are a part of the enterprise. And those devices are accessed through clients that are Fusion Pro and Player Pro, which is our Type 2 hypervisor that sits on top of Mac OS or on top of Windows. And then we leverage VMware Mirage, Horizon Mirage, for access to manage those images that we're going to provide inside of those virtual machine containers, and wrap that all together, and that essentially is what Horizon Flex is. Okay. So let me go down and talk about the individual components a little bit. So Horizon Mirage, which is an ability to manage physical and virtual desktops and the OSs inside of them. What Mirage does is it basically, you install an agent into an OS, and that agent looks at all the components in that OS and breaks them down into these layers. And you can see that there's like 4 layers highlighted here. There's your driver layer, and those are the things that make that physical piece of hardware different. It could be a Dell hardware, it could be an HP hardware, it could be, you name it. Then we have a base layer, and that base layer is basically a generic version of a Windows OS and some core applications. So now instead of managing 1,000 desktops, we're managing one core OS, and we're creating this driver library. So now we can do a one-to-many scenario around groups of PCs. Then what we've done is we've taken the ability to create what we call application layers. And those application layers are captured independently on vanilla versions of that Windows OS. And then we could create app layers based on an end user's role in the organization, and then tie them to Active Directory domain groups. So finance. So we put all the finance applications in one app layer. We put development in another. And then we are able to provide access to those applications through Horizon Mirage. And what happens is Horizon Mirage has a Mirage server in the back end of the data center. And this is where we collect our centralized virtual disks for all the desktops. And this is stored on a deduplicated infrastructure. And so these agents on these desktops wake up every hour or so. They look to see what's changed on that desktop and push out those changes to the Mirage management server. Another interesting that happens here is that since a lot of the data is deduplicated on the back end, only bits that aren't on the Mirage server get translated or transferred, and only changes get transferred. So now we have this ability for point-in-time recovery. So that is a great way then to leverage this, because now we have user-personalized data and user-installed apps in the data center as well. So if that endpoint dies and gets destroyed, or a truck runs over it, or it's a migration process, we can simply slide in a new base layer. Let's say there's patches to the OS, push that out to the endpoints. The end user sees a request to reboot the node. They reboot the node when they're ready, and then they have that new version of the OS or the application. There's also a self-service mechanism that allows end users to bring down files that they may have changed or corrupted or so forth. So this does a lot of neat stuff for us. One is that it allows us to manage endpoints in a one-to-many fashion. It's a great backup and recovery process. It's designed for distributed environments, so now we can create one image and deploy it out. And then it allows us to enhance the lifecycle tools that customers are already using in their infrastructure. A lot of customers like the tools they're using, but a lot of them don't allow for these types of features. So it's not a rip and replace to their PCLM infrastructures that they're using today. Anyway, that was a very quick discussion about Mirage. If you think that is something that you'd like to have a deeper dive on, talk to Kevin and we can have another discussion about it. All right, so Mirage is a core part of Horizon Flex. But also we have our Flex policy server, and what the policy server does is it allows us to create containers to drop those images in and push them out to those endpoints. So also there is a self-service mechanism on the endpoint that the end user can opt in and out for specific use cases. All right, any questions? All right, so once again, the use cases for Horizon Flex are, bring your own, offline end users, Macs in the enterprise, we're seeing that, and contractors. All right, so at the end of the day, though, what does Flex offer? It offers a high-fidelity desktop experience, meaning that all execution happens locally. So if there are, for any reasons, there's networking or issues about applications running remotely and so forth, this takes those concerns away. I talked about the self-service deployment. It's policy-based, so the end user, the managers create those policies and then it follows through with them, such as access to specific components, expiration, and lockout. And it's fully integrated with your customer's Active Directory infrastructures. All right. So I've talked about a bunch of different components, and I want to sort of break them down, because now we sit here and we say, well, how do I figure out which use case is best for my user? So just to really position these products very clearly, Mirage is a way of centrally managing endpoints where execution happens at the endpoint. So these could be physical desktops, it could be, or they could be in virtual machines. Okay. View, on the other hand, is centralized management and centralized execution on top, inside the data center. And what we're pushing out is this PC over IP. So the thing is that you need to be connected to the network there, whereas Mirage, you do not. And then finally, Horizon Flex is an extension of what Mirage does, but also it has this policy server that makes it easier to control access to those containers of virtual machines that are sitting on the remote nodes. So once again, this is local execution of a virtual machine. All right, hopefully that makes it a little more clear as to when we decide which use case.
No, that's really excellent. I just want a quick add. You guys have heard me say it before 1,000 times over. When we're talking about end user computing, it always starts with the use case. The use case drives the technological adoption, not the other way around. And so, consider this, when we're out talking to our customers and we're talking to, each other as partners, that we're, aligning the right technology, and that kind of allows us to lead with the VMware solution.
Okay, great. So I have a few more slides here that I want to go through. I know we're getting to close to the top of the hour, but let's see how quickly I can talk about this. So the next is our Horizon Air on vCloud Air. And the idea here is that if we have a customer who doesn't want to deal with the infrastructure anymore, this gives them the ability to buy by the desktop resources, and then be able to expand, do cloud bursting or so forth. We also have desktop DR, and so this framework allows for that. We also now allow our end users to do hosted apps over RDSH hosts using the same technology I talked about earlier, so they can provide apps as a service as well. This is the different ways that customers can purchase vCloud Horizon Air. So we have standard desktop, we have advanced, and then we have enterprise. And so you can go on our website and see the details on that. But there's different consumption models. Minimum order quantity of 50 for either one for these choices. We also allow our end users to run a couple of server workloads inside of one of those VMs to have localization for those applications and tools that are being run in the cloud, so that we're not running back, creating VPN pipes back to their infrastructure if they don't want to. Hosted apps is very similar. Price point, quantity of 5, and this is what that architecture looks like. It's a 20 vCPU, 30 gigs of RAM, and so forth. All right, so I talked about local access all the way to cloud access. Some other things, so the new technology, App Volumes, which was formerly known as Cloud Volumes, is a new technology that we're bringing in to our tool suite. And the way this works is, in the past, applications were installed into an operating system, and that really made it a very rigid way of managing those OSs. What we've done now is we've created this agent that sits in between the OS and the applications, so that we can provide access to those applications and even user data on the fly without having to install the applications locally. So what's really cool about this is, if you think about this use case, is that based on an end user's role in the organization, we can give them an app stack that is for their role, and then have a non-persistent desktop that they connect to, and then also they can connect to their writable volumes. So on the fly, they get access to their tools and what they need. This allows us then to do a great way of lifecycle management. So let's say some of these core apps are changed, we modify that, and then on the next login, those applications are immediately updated. And this can be used for virtual desktop environments as well as RDSH hosts. So what App Volumes gives us and delivers is agility, the ability to create these sets once and then deploy them all over the enterprise. It's simple, it's easy to use, the infrastructure installs very quickly, it's very easy to manage. And then we give this persistent, through flexibility, we give this persistent end user experience. And also, it also works with Citrix XenApps, and we see this as a great use case for Citrix as well. So, if you have a customer that's interested in simplifying application development for their XenApp infrastructure, this tool can be leveraged for that as well. All right, so I'm going to talk about really quickly about a vision that VMware sees. So, we talked about this, access to tools, on demand and so forth. And so what we looked at today is, when we're deploying a virtual desktop, for example, we clone it, we power it on, we customize it, it's ready to use. This takes some time. But what we've done is we've figured out a methodology for cloning virtual desktops on the fly, and this, if you want to read more about it, it's something we call Project Fargo, but it allows us to fork, which means build a VM on the fly from a live running VM and provide access to it right away. The issue around that is once we can clone this template, from your tablet, for example, you get to a virtual desktop, it's available right away, but now we have to have the ability to provide access to the applications in a real-time mode. And that's where app volumes will be a component of this. And so therefore we're showing that through non-persistent desktops, we can give a persistent, immediate access to tools and resources. It's a very interesting feature that we've got developed here. So just-in-time desktop is what we're talking about. All right, I'm going to roll it out at the end here. There's a lot of new enhancements in vCenter operations, vRealize for Horizon. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on this call here. The idea is that these infrastructures are complex, and we need a tool that can help our infrastructure, self-heal or figure out how to figure out central reasons for the disruptions and so forth. So that's what vRealize does for us. Very quickly, an admin can look up an object, figure out what's going on, quickly find the anomalies or the things that are causing the slowness and problems, and then be able to very quickly go in and resolve the issue. Another thing that we've added is in-guest view of applications, and this happens on demand. So if a customer is complaining that their application is not running properly and so forth. vSAN is a great way to get customers into small deployments. vSAN allows us to use the local storage. It's fully integrated into vSphere and into the Horizon View. We've done a reference architecture around that, so go take a look at it. And that reference architecture that I just pointed to shows that we can deploy many link clones and so forth, and this is done on a very small budget. So if you're interested and you have a customer who's saying, hey, I want to deploy it, but I can't pay for it in the hardware alone, take a look at this reference architecture, and we'll provide you access to that white paper. Another thing is that we're working very closely with NVIDIA to offer feature-rich graphics using the NVIDIA K1, K2 grid cards, and look for learning more about that. But this really breaks down the barriers to those high-end customers that are doing engineering and so forth with CAD and other types of applications, oil and so forth, and research. And also in health and medical, because they need access to high-end graphics for looking at, let's say, X-rays or MRI scans on tablets. There's also the ability to do self-service through the enterprise version now. We have links to vSphere Orchestrator to provide self-service through VCAC. That's something else to talk about. And we're now at the end of this presentation, where we're back to talking about the edition. So standard edition comes with with View, some thin app in the virtual infrastructure to manage it, published apps and Horizon Workspace and Virtual SAN show up in the Advanced Edition, and then that monitoring and analytics and provisioning shows up in the Enterprise Edition. I want to talk about a couple of resources. The Hands-On Lab are a great tool. If you don't know about them, they're live running environments. They're built on demand. You can use them for your own training or for your customers' training. You don't have to deploy a POC anymore. You tell them to go take the Hands-On Lab on Horizon or on Workspace, and they learn how to use the application ahead of time, so you can get them over that hurdle of familiarity with the tool suite. We just created this end-user computing launch playbook. It's available in Partner Central. I highly recommend you download that, take a look, and it talks about these new use cases. So finally, next steps. Let's download that end-user computing launch playbook, study it, understand it, be able to recognize the opportunities, leverage the Hands-On Lab for your training and for your customer discussions. Start talking to them about app volumes and Horizon Flex for application deployment or for local compute solutions. And then when you have a customer who's interested in learning more and doing something in their environment, use the Horizon Reviewer Guides. They're great. They're 100-page walkthrough on how to deploy it in a POC or in a demo environment. So with that, and I want to thank you guys for your time today.